Anger echoed around Washington today over the death of Otto Warmbier.
It's a total disgrace what happened to Otto. That should never, ever be allowed to happen.
Murder, Senator John McCain called it.
What do you think about someone who comes back totally incomprehensible and with significant brain damage? What would you describe it as?
Warmbier's return to the U.S. and his death yesterday puts the spotlight on a handful of other foreign prisoners in North Korea, including one Canadian, Reverend Hyun Soo Lim, prisoner number 36 in this interview last year. He was arrested 2.5 years ago and has been in custody ever since. As the senior pastor of the Light Korean Presbyterian Church in the Toronto area, he traveled to North Korea more than 100 times, leading what his supporters say were ambitious humanitarian missions. He was sentenced to life and hard labor after confessing to crimes against North Korea in what appeared to be a heavily scripted trial.
I think Otto's death just reminded us that this is very real.
A spokesperson for his family hopes renewed attention will get results.
So we do want to be able to put appropriate pressure on the Canadian government to escalate diplomacy.
Canadian officials have visited Lim and insist, without providing details, he is a priority. In a statement to CBC News, Global Affairs Canada said today, "We have been actively engaged on this difficult case, and consular officials are working actively to secure Mr. Lim's release." The quiet approach didn't work for Otto Warmbier, as his family is now pointing out. But this activist, who knows Reverend Lim, says Warmbier's death doesn't fit into the usual pattern in North Korea of very public trials and later prisoners being granted much less public releases.
They're generally good as bargaining chips, and the less that you harm these bargaining chips, the more likely that you'll get a bigger return out of them.
What North Korea might want for Lim isn't known. And if diplomacy has to wait until the anger over Warmbier's death fades, that will take time. Warmbier will have a public funeral in his hometown of Cincinnati later this week. Howard Gould, CBC News, Toronto.